Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of my Athletic Compendium. This week we are going to talk about supercompensation theory. Something you might have heard of, something you may not have heard of. It's definitely something I hadn't heard of until last week. You made a very good point. We discussed it last week, so we thought let's make an episode on it. Max, what is it?
From the time you train, you're going to have a dip in performance because you're going to be fatigued. You're going to have DOMs. You're going to, your central nervous system needs time to recover and whatever. So you're going to have that dip in performance. So you're going to go below your baseline in performance. You're then going to hit the peak in that dip, right? And then you're going to start to recover. So this could be after 12 hours, 24 hours, maybe even, 48 hours. You're going to have this slow incline and you're going to surpass your baseline.
Yeah.
So that's your performance from before that training session. And you're going to pass that and then you're going to go into this supercompensation area, which is where you've got an increase in performance. So you're going to be, after that session, you're going to be a little bit stronger, you're going to be a little bit quicker, you're going to be a little bit more powerful, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got this time window where you can train again, because you want to be training at a frequency where you're in this supercompensation area. So
where your performance is better.
Where your performance is better than what it was before. And you've got to train in this window before that curve starts to curve back down below the baseline. Because if you wait too long between training sessions, you'll miss that window where you're in that supercompensation.
And you're just back to baseline.
And then you'll be back to baseline or maybe even below that.
Right.
Because you've left it so long between training sessions.
Okay. So the graph is like a time along the x-axis.
Yeah.
Time along the x-axis. Performance is on your y-axis, and you're getting a trough, a dip in performance. Obviously, over time as you've trained, so you're getting that dip, that trough, and then with some recovery and the recovery time after your training session, you're getting that recovery back to baseline, and then because of that training session, you're going into positive performance, and then it's almost like a sideways S. It waves essentially, where you're going up and you're in positive performance, and that's where you want to train again at that peak. Yeah, that's right, is it?
Yeah, just anywhere. Obviously, in an ideal world, you want to get to that peak of supercompensation, but anywhere in the positive, you're going to be making gains in terms of performance gains or strength gains.
Because I suppose that peak and that dip and then peak again is now at a higher level.
Yeah,
it's almost like stacking them on top of each other.
Yeah.
Because you're starting your baseline actually where the supercompensation part is. Is that right?
Yeah.
So each time you're dipping and going higher.
Yeah.
At a higher level.
Yeah. And then an extension of that. So that's like the simple over one training session essentially, or two training sessions. But you can do this over a period of a week or so, where you have when I say the gym session that you have or whatever, that's just a stress. So when I say a stress, I mean that can be the gym, that could be a rugby session, that could be a fitness session, that could be anything. It's just a stressor. But over a longer period of time, you can have several stress points. So that can be having multiple sessions in a day. So that could be a rugby session, a gym session and whatever. You can have multiple stresses, and you can also have that spread out over several days. So you can have, from your baseline, you have a stress. So you have a training session on a Monday.
Yep.
You have that dip in performance. Yep. And then you train and stress again. So you go even further down and go even further down. And you can have about 3 stresses or 4 stresses.
We're talking in one day?
In the week. Right. But to a point where you're not recovering enough from one session to the next.
Right.
So you get in this decline, you're going further into the hole. But then after better sufficient recovery, you can have a rest week or
like
over a long week. Yeah, but it doesn't even necessarily have to be that long. It depends from person to person on how well you recover. But even after 2 days of a weekend of just recovering and relaxing and doing that active recovery, you can have that, you can get that benefit of the supercompensation. So you're down.
So your weekly training block where you're saying, I'm training in the gym for hypertrophy 4 days a week, just that rest on a 2-day weekend could give you that sufficient.
Yeah, you can get, because you can go deeper into that negative, but it's then, you know, if you recover sufficiently, you can get the benefit on the up, you know, into the positive. I stole this in a really good book. If you're into your, you know, into your strength and conditioning, and you're a bit nerdy and you like to learn all this stuff, there's a book called Triphasic. I can't remember the author's name, but Triphasic is a really good book. It teaches you more or less everything in terms of programming. And there's these graphs are in this book, and it explains supercompensation, and it explains all the different sort of types of supercompensation that you can have, whether it's just from one session, you know, you recover and then you're back in that positive and then you train again, or when you know, have multiple stresses, you go further and further into the negative, have a rest, you know, weekend of active recovery and whatever, and then you
so multiple stresses could be across the span of a week, sort of thing. Okay.
So that, again, it's really, really obvious on this graph, but you know, you can have 2 stresses on one day. So on that time along there, you can have 2 stresses here, which cause you to go down. And you can have 1 stressor here, go down even further, another stressor, and then you can come back up. So, for example, right, the first example I took to explain, so that first supercompensation where you have a stress, you go into the negative, and then you go into the positive. That could be, say you train 3 times a week with a day rest in between. That would replicate that, you know, quite well, because you've got that day of rest where it's allowing you to
slightly peaking up
to come back up, exactly. Whereas if you're doing 4 sessions a week, so you do Monday, Tuesday, rest on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you'll have stress here, you'll go down, you'll have another stress the next day, you'll go further down because you've not had sufficient time to recover. And then on the Wednesday, you know, you've got a bit of recovery, so you'll come back up a little bit, and you've got your Thursday, your Friday, so go back even further, and you've got your 2 days rest, then you can come back up.
And then hoping that by the time you're up after the weekend, you start that whole process again.
Exactly.
So where does the deload week or a rest week come into play?
So that's if you've had lots of stresses throughout the week, but on, you know, for multiple weeks, over several weeks, and if you're not quite getting that recovery benefit, where you're getting that supercompensation, you're continuously progressing. If you're not getting that, then you need a deload week to have that effect.
And how do you know if you're not in that?
This is the complicated thing, and this is where things like RPEs, which is basically a rate of perceived exertion or fatigue. So you can do an RPE, it's just a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being my body is broken, I can't do another training session, and 1 being I'm good to go, I'm raring to go kind of thing.
RPE is also used for like reps as well, isn't it?
Yeah, you can use them
for
reps.
I know
stuff,
for example, 10 is, that's my 100%, 1 rep max. 9 is, I've got 1 more, I've squatted really, really heavy, that was really, really hard. You know, I'm just saying squat because it's an easy exercise to say. But I've got 1 more in the tank, and I've left 1 more in the tank. 9.5 was like, I maybe have 1 more in the tank. You don't know until you would try that.
And you fail
and fail. and it goes the same for 8, 7, 6. So 8 would be, I've definitely got 2 more in the tank. 8.5 would be, I've definitely got 1 in the tank, I've maybe got 2. And that's how you know, different, I suppose, programmers tell you what. It sort of replicates percentages, doesn't it? But, and what you should be training throughout your program. But
as long as you've got a good understanding of how you're feeling, and your coaches, like, you know, a professional sports club, there are different ways that you can do it. So RPEs is like obviously a perceived exertion, which it can be quite inconsistent, because a lot of the time, you know, if boys have had they've had a skills session, a gym session, then a rugby session all in one day, and after that a rugby session, you're trying to get them to fill out a form with RPs, a lot of the time they're going to be like, I just want to go home and just fucking whatever. So there's going to be some deviation with it. The best thing that I like to do is link the RPs, but also do other ways to test their fatigue levels from week to week. So in pre-season, you know, when you should be in your pretty much peak of performance in terms of, you know, we've managed your training loads, you should be strong, you should be powerful. You'll do your baseline, baseline, maximum, like season best on a counter movement jump and an RSI. Excuse me. So counter movement jump, you're on a force, like a jump mat.
Yeah.
Which essentially just times how long you're in the air for with a jump. And obviously it'll convert that into inches and centimeters and so on. So you know what your maximum is for that. So then throughout the week, maybe once or twice a week, depending on where you want to understand how they'll fatigue, you can place, what's it called? You can place that test at strategic points to see, okay, how are they fatiguing? If you find that their performance in that counter movement jump is declining slowly,
right,
on by week 4, say it's dropped by quite a significant amount, you can then think, okay, deload week is a good shout right now. So you see what I'm saying? And it's the same RSI. So that's similar thing. So you basically, you're jumping as high as you can, but it's timed by the amount of time that you spend with your feet on the floor. So you'll do multiple jumps all at once, and it times how long you're in the air for, but also your contact time on the floor. Right. This is more applicable for your central nervous system. So counter movement jump is quite like it's requiring your central nervous system and your neural fatigue, but it's also a little bit in your muscular fatigue.
Yeah.
Whereas RSI is very neural, and do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they're slightly different, but the same or a very similar test, but they test slightly different things.
And that's how you can get a better clue of what's going on with the person.
Yeah, because their CMJ might be pretty fucking good and where it should be, but their
CMJ? What's that?
Counter movement jump, the first one.
Yeah.
So where you just counter movement jump. Sorry, is CMJ. So it's just a jump as high as you can, and then you've got your RSI. So your CMJ might be somewhat where it should be.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, okay, yeah, we can probably go another week or two of this, but then that RSI will drop loads because their neural. Say you're in a power and speed block, their neural sort of
it's taking more of a battering.
It's taken more of a battering, so you need to be a little bit.
So you'd use them both hand in hand to get a better picture.
Yeah.
But how does someone who is not a semi-pro, not having these coaches around them, know when they need a deload?
This is again where it's not quite as easy. If you're just you have a gym facility and whether you're a sports player or not, if you're doing your own thing and whatever, you've got to be sensible. So even if you feel like you've trained at quite a good frequency, you've trained 4 times a week, you're training well, but you're starting to get that little bit of fatigue, then there's your cue to have a deload week. If you've been training for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, 4 days a week, and you're doing okay, you're doing all right, you're hitting good numbers, but at that point you think, okay, I'm doing well, which is great news, but I've been going for 6, 7, 8 weeks and not had a deload week. Maybe if I did have a rest week, that might spike my supercompensation.
Yeah.
Because you might be just about progressing, but if you give yourself a deload week and give your body a chance to fully recover, you might go up even more and have massive strength gains and performance gains. So even if you are improving, if it's been 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, then maybe you can go a little bit longer. But if you've been going 6, 7, 8 weeks, then you should start thinking, okay, even though I'm doing all right and I'm hitting good numbers and I'm performing quite well, it might be sensible to have a bit of a deload week, get some good food on, make sure that I'm doing my recovery properly, and then you might find that you'll explode even better the following week.
Right. Makes sense. Yeah.
I think that's a really good tip, because a lot of
I'm definitely relating that to myself. Obviously, you're training me now, but prior to that, I was either doing some strength work, or I was doing some hypertrophy work, or integrating the two. Never really doing any strength and power work, and I felt like if I was out of the gym for a week, it was a negative thing, and it was more, I'm gonna decline in my performance than I would actually benefit my performance. And unless I was going on holiday where I was literally forced to. Well, even when I went on holiday, I'd then do sort of bodyweight workouts, and almost because you're not lifting weight, I'd probably be going harder. Because you're going to exhaustion then. So yeah, probably not. Probably a week off would have actually been beneficial.
100%, especially if you're on a holiday. Like, you go on holiday to enjoy yourself and to recover and relax and whatever. And if you're trying to do, even if you, because no one fucking likes to do bodyweight exercises. So in your head, you'll be thinking, oh, I feel like I should train. And then it's kind of like a stress on your mind. And then, you're forcing yourself to do this, and it's not what you want to, and it's not just like a physiological, like physical, I've got to train, but it's also that stress in your head. You're on holiday and you're thinking, you're feeling guilty because it's not a good idea. But one thing that a complete separate thing is that I want to get across, and I think the reason why I want to get across is because it's probably one of the best, most applicable thing for most people out there is to have a plan, because it's so frequent, like yourself, people who will just smash the gym so consistently over a long period of time, and they'll feel almost guilty if they have a deload week because they're not improving. So how's having a rest week going to help that? Because it's but it's really important again to have that deload week so you can have that spike and that supercompensation. On the flip side of it, if you're training quite like hit and miss, like you'll have a couple of really good days and then you'll have like a few days off and then you'll go again, and it's like not very consistent. You got like that's where you're kind of, and this is something that probably that trap that I fall into, even though I'm my own worst enemy because I know this shit. It's just a case of I don't do it for myself. I'll have a few really good days and then a few like pretty crap days where I won't do anything. I won't be recovering properly. I'll just literally be doing my life, and then I'll go train again. And that in itself is bad, because if you've not got that routine and not got that structure and not got that plan in place, I'm then thinking, okay, well, when do I do a deload week? Because I've had a couple of days off here or a few days off here, but it's not been productive days off. It's been days where I've been fucking coaching on my feet all day and whatever, and I've not done any active recovery. So I'm not recovering, but I'm still having a day off. Do you see what I'm saying? So, and that's the trap that I fall into, which I'm trying to work on now. Bit of, again, a side tangent, I've pulled my back out because I've been training quite poorly. Not because I don't know what I'm doing, obviously, it's just a case of I've not been doing it, like applying it to myself. And that's taught me a lesson. I've learned the hard way that I need to actually look after my body a bit better. And, this is one of the ways, you've got to be consistent with your training in terms of, treat gym sessions like a dentist appointment. You don't miss dentist appointments. So you'll go to the gym at that time on that day, you'll hit this specific area, and then you'll do that for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, and then have your deload week. Whether you feel like you want it or not, you'll have that deload week. Because
my worst things, when I'm at work and I'm playing rugby, everything is so routine. Like you said, you don't miss those appointments. So 4 days a week, I'll go to the gym, I know exactly when I'm going to the gym, and know when I'm doing my recovery stuff. And then when it comes to like summer, we're in the off season, I'm on holiday here, there, I'm going away for weekends. That's when it starts to cock up your system, because we're doing a hypertrophy. Well, you're training me with a hypertrophy block, and then all of a sudden I'm away Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you're like, well, no, I need to. There's no way I can possibly train. But now I need to get those 4 sessions now in 3 days. Obviously not going to happen. But then you're starting to tip over into the next week. And then you're like, well, do I do 5 sessions this week just to make sure I'm still on my track?
That is the difficult part, and this is something which admittedly I should have probably had a conversation with you about before. But it's a great bit of advice for yourself and anyone else, because this is such, again, everyone does that. Life gets in the way. People go away, or people aren't able to train as they're structured. Obviously in an ideal world I'd say have your routine and stick with it, but life gets in the way, and in cases like that say you go away for 4 days and you're supposed to be training 2 of those 4 days, for example, in that case, as long as you're proactive with that time away, although it's not ideal because you should be training 2 of those 4 days, treat it as, okay, I'm away, I'm going to be proactive, okay, I know that I'm not going to be able to get to the gym, but I can do some active recovery, I can go for a walk, I can spend 5-10 minutes stretching, I can spend a little bit of time maybe foam rolling if you've got that with you.
Making sure I'm ready to go for when the time is right.
Yeah, and maybe on your training days, if you do have a spare half hour, 45 minutes, hour or whatever, which at some point you would imagine then on that day that you're supposed to be training, go for a run. Just get your trainers on, go for a little jog or a swim or whatever. So you're still training, although it's not like the plan, you're not hitting your hypertrophy session. At least you're doing something. And you're still getting that muscular or neural fatigue, and you're still kind of heading in that kind of direction. Yeah, it's better than just not doing anything, and you just got to roll with the waves a little bit.
Yeah, you're there to live life at the end of the day, aren't you?
Yeah.
So
everyone's the same. You just got to be a little bit.
When I was 18, or even 16 to 18, I thought I'm going to lose all my size if I had a week off. So even going on holiday in the summer, I was in a villa in Spain doing bodyweight pull-ups, press-ups, doing 2 workouts a day because I was like, the last thing I want to do is lose all my muscle from... And now, obviously, I've been training since I was 15. I'm now 26. I know I can have a week off. And I might probably put on a bit of body weight because generally when I stop training, I'm on holiday, probably eating, maybe drinking a bit more. In terms of muscle, you're not going to lose muscle in a week.
No, and you can, again, say you have that, whether it's a structured deload week or whether it's you're just going on holiday and it just happens to be in the middle of your program or
that's it.
Subconscious.
I suppose the best thing to do would be to program a rest week or a deload week on when you're going on holiday. But
no, that's exactly what I do for my clients. And it's the same, not just around holidays, but it's also around competition. You do structure things around competitions and around. One of my clients has a 10K or half marathon? I think it's 10K. Has a 10K race on Sunday. So we've tapered off her week this week. We're in the middle, right smack bang in the middle of a hypertrophy program. Yeah. But we're tapering off this week. And what I mean by taper off is start the week pretty intense, but then as the days go by, just drop the intensity, and then have a couple of days off, a regen day, and then a rest day, and then into a competition. So she's still doing her program, but just at a lesser intensity because we know that she's going to have a very fatigued day on Sunday when her race is. And so you'll work around that competition, and you might, if you're an athletics athlete, so if you are a 100-meter sprinter, obviously you'll tailor your program around that competition, and you'll have your deload week, before that competition, and making sure that you fire in on competition day. And so again, whether you're just a semi-professional athlete or if you're just a gym goer or whatever, you can say, okay, well in 8 weeks I've got a holiday planned and booked. So for the next 8 weeks I'll split that up into 4 weeks with a deload week towards the end. Well, obviously that's makes sense, but you know what I mean. You tailor it so on my holiday I'm going to have that as a deload week and just chill out and do whatever, and then build into your next block with a bit of an introduction into it, which is low volume, and then just increase it and go from there.
Makes sense.
So I think the kind of take home from this is kind of, have structure to your weeks, have structure to your mesocycle, which is the period that you're working through, and know what you're doing when, and just try and stick with it as best as possible.
Try and be as consistent as you can. Don't worry if.
And just be sensible. Get yourself a deload week in there every now and again, and listen to your body a little bit. Don't do what I do. Do as I say, not as I do. Otherwise you'll pull your back out and you can't stand upright.
I'm the same, absolutely. Do as I say, not as I do. That wraps up quite nicely, doesn't it? Yeah. Lovely. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back next week for another episode. Not too sure what we're going to do it on yet, but hope you look forward to it.
Dilly dilly.
Dilly dilly.
The pit of misery.
To the pit of misery.